Welcome to Value Plays Only, where eminence just means one less card on board. Today we have Tyler, playing Glarb, Calamity's Augur. This is a Sultai control deck looking to use Glarb's card advantage and Surveil to police the table. It can win with Thassa's Oracle or an Aetherflux Reservoir Loop. His hand contains a Valley Floodcaller, Talion the Kindly Lord, Mox Amber, Lotus Petal, Veil of Summer, Windswept Heath, and Scalding Tarn. Cammy is playing Winota, Join Our Forces. This deck is packed to the brim with creatures. It looks to stacks out the board while cheating in massive combat threats. Her hand contains Mother of Runes, Ginger Brute, Ocelot Pride, Magus of the Moon, Boromir, Warden of the Tower, Gemstone Caverns, and Monumental Henge. John is playing Vivi Ornitier. This deck looks to storm off with Curiosity style effects, winning with Underworld Breach. His hand contains a Gamble, Light Up the Stage, Dramatic Reversal, Mana Vault, City Traders, and Training Center. His Lund Mulligan is a Hullbreaker Horror. Dan is playing Atraxa, Grand Unifier. This is a big mana food chain deck. It looks to ramp out its commander for massive value, winning with Thassa's Oracle or commander damage. His hand contains an Offer You Can't Refuse, Elvish Spirit Guide, Exotic Orchard, Savannah, and Besaja Who Endures. His Lund Mulligans are Watery Grave and Demonic Consultation. And with that, let's see some value plays. Cammy has a pregame action, putting Gemstone Caverns into play, exiling Mother of Runes. Tyler starts things off with a Windswept Heath. He casts a Lotus Petal and a Mox Amber. He pays a life and cracks Windswept Heath, fetching up a Breathing Pool, into play tapped. Tyler passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She plays a Monumental Henge as land for turn, into play tapped. She casts an Ornithopter. She casts an Ocelot Pride. Cammy passes the turn. John plays a Training Center as land for turn. He casts a Gamble. John searches up a card in hand and randomly discards Light Up the Stage. He then passes the turn. Dan plays an Exotic Orchard as land for turn. He passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Scalding Tarn as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up an Underground Sea. He passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She casts an Aethersworn Canonist. Cammy goes to combat. At the start of the combat, Tyler casts an Orcish Bowmasters. It enters and triggers to pick Ocelot Pride, killing it. Cammy then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays City of Traders as land for turn. He casts a Rhystic Study. Dan responds with an Offer You Can't Refuse. John begs for mercy as there's a Rule Law and a Bowmaster, but Dan does not relent. Offer counters Rhystic and John makes 2 treasures. He then passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Tundra as land for turn. He passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He casts his commander, Glarb, Calamity's Augur. Tyler goes to combat and swings his orcs at Dan. Dan takes the damage and Tyler passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She plays a Marsh Flats as land for turn. She pays life and cracks it, fetching up the plains. Cammy casts Magus of the Moon. Everyone looks to each other for answers, but Magus resolves. Cammy then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays a Mountain as land for turn. He casts his commander, Vivi Ornitier. He then casts Mana Vault. Vivi triggers to get a 1/1 counter and deal 1 to each opponent. John passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Mountain as land for turn. He passes the turn, locked out by all the stacks. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Mountain as land for turn. He casts a Valley Floodcaller. It enters and Tyler goes to combat, swinging his Orc army at Dan. He takes the damage and Tyler passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She plays a Mountain as land for turn. She casts her commander, Winota, Join Our Forces. In response, Tyler activates Glarb to Surveil 2, putting Dark Ritual in the grave and the other back on top. Cammy then goes to combat. She swings all her creatures at Dan. Winota triggers to put Professional Facebreaker into play, tapped and attacking John. John and Dan take the damage, and Facebreaker triggers to make 2 treasures. Cammy then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He casts Gataxian Probe, targeting Tyler. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. John looks at Tyler's terrible hand, and then draws a card. With no more gas, John has to pass the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Mountain as land for turn. He passes the turn yet again. Tyler untaps and draws. He casts a Bloom Tender. He then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She casts a Ginger Brute. Cammy goes to combat. She swings Magus, Aethersworn, and Ginger Brute at Dan, and Ornithopter and Facebreaker at John. Winota triggers twice. The first trigger puts Blade Historian into play, tapped and attacking Tyler. The second trigger fails to find. Everyone takes first strike damage and Facebreaker triggers to make 3 treasures. Regular damage happens and Facebreaker triggers to make 3 more treasures. In her second main phase, Cammy casts Boromir, Warden of the Tower. She then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays a Mountain Saga as land for turn. John passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a very expensive Mountain as land for turn. Dan passes the turn. In his end step, Tyler activates Glarb to Surveil 2, leaving them on top. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Mountain as land for turn. He casts a Wishclaw Talisman. It resolves and Tyler activates it, saying he'll give it to John to help find an out to this board. Cammy responds by flashing at a Cathar Commando. She pays 1 and sacrifices it, destroying Wishclaw to keep her opponents from colluding anymore. Tyler then goes searching through his library for an answer. John asks if he has Toxic Deluge. Tyler says no. He asks about Cyclonic Rift. Also a no. John asks what the hell kind of control deck this is, as Tyler adds a card to hand. Trying to live another turn, Tyler casts the One Ring. It enters and he gains protection from everything. Tyler then goes to combat and swings his orcs at Dan. Dan takes the damage, and Tyler passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She goes to combat and swings Ornithopter and Facebreaker at John. She swings Aethersworn, Gingerbrute, Magus, Blade Historian, Winota, and Boromir at Dan. Winota triggers twice. The first trigger puts Voice of Victory into play, locking everyone out this turn, tapped and attacking John. The second trigger puts Recruiter the Guard into play, tapped and attacking John. It triggers to search up a Skyclave apparition to hand. John blocks Recruiter with Vivi. They both take First Strike and Facebreaker triggers to make 2 treasures. They take regular damage and Facebreaker makes 2 more treasures. And then Dan dies. In her second main phase, Cammy casts Skyclave Apparition. It enters and triggers, targeting the One Ring. In response, Tyler activates Glarb to Surveil 2, putting both in grave. He activates the One Ring to draw a card. The One Ring is then exiled. Cammy passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He hardcasts Maug Salvage, targeting Gingerbrute. Vivi triggers to get a counter and ping Cammy for 1. After a lot of debate from Cammy, Gingerbrute is destroyed. John then has to pass the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Mountain as land for turn. He goes into the tank on how not to lose to Cammy. He asks if John could use the Wish Claw to get Cyclonic Rift. John says for sure, but he may die before he gets to him. Tyler casts Yawgmoth's Will. He then casts Lotus Petal from his grave. He casts Wish Claw Talisman from his grave. He activates it, searching up a card to hand and giving Wish Claw to John. Tyler then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She plays a Mountain as land for turn. Cammy activates Facebreaker, sacrificing treasures to start looking for more things to do. She flips into Simian Spirit Guide, Mox Diamond, Plains, Maug Catcher, Soul Ring, Battlefield Forge, Pyretic Ritual, and Arid Mesa, deciding to stop there. With no good cards to cast, she goes to combat, swinging Winota, Ornithopter, Voice of Victory, and Boromir at John. She swings Facebreaker, Recruiter to Skyclave at Tyler. Winota triggers twice, and Voice triggers to make 2 1/1 warriors, tapped and attacking John. The first trigger puts Loyal Apprentice into play, attacking John. The second trigger puts Witch Enchanter into play, tapped and attacking Tyler. It triggers to destroy Wishclaw Talisman. John waves goodbye to the second Wishclaw he's been given, destroyed before he untaps. John blocks Loyal Apprentice with Vivi and takes 20 total. Tyler takes 14. Facebreaker makes 4 treasures between First Strike and regular damage. In her second main phase, Cammy casts Soul Ring. She casts Maug Catcher. Cammy then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He casts a Valley Flood Caller. He then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He casts Deadly Relic for 4 mana, targeting Aethersworn Canonist. Canonist is exiled. Tyler casts Abrupt Decay, targeting Boromir. Cammy sacrifices Boromir in response to give her creatures indestructible. He activates Glarb to Surveil, putting both cards in his grave. Tyler casts a Talion, the Kindly Lord, naming 2 as it enters. He then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She activates Facebreaker to exile Grand Abolisher. She then activates Maug Catcher, searching up a Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker to the battlefield. She activates Kiki Jiki, making a copy of Skyclave Apparition. It triggers to exile Talion. Cammy goes to combat. At the start of combat, Loyal Apprentice triggers to make a 1/1 Thopter with haste. Cammy swings a Thopter, Skyclave Copy, Professional Facebreaker, Magus the Moon, Winota, and Blade Historian at Tyler. She swings Ornithopter, Witch Enchanter, Recruiter, Loyal Apprentice, and Voice of Victory at John. Winota triggers 4 times, Voice makes 2 1/1 warriors, also tapped and attacking John. The first trigger puts in Riolia, Fire Dancer, tapped and attacking Tyler. The second puts Combat Celebrant into play, tapped and attacking Tyler. The third puts Zealous Conscripts into play, tapped and attacking Tyler, and triggers to take his Orc army. At this point, John and Tyler can see the wave of lethal attacks and concede before the last trigger even resolves. And with that, Cammy wins the game. Today, we have a 2-for-1 deal. In this game, we have Nick from the Top Deckers playing Thrasios, Triton Hero, and Tymna the Weaver. This deck leverages 2 card advantage engines in the command zone to piece together either Infinite Mana or Thassa's Oracle Win. His hand contains a Carpet of Flowers, Birds of Paradise, Arcane Signet, Mindbreak Trap, Scrubland, and Verdant Catacombs. His Luna Mulligan is a swift reconfiguration. John is again playing Vivi Ornitier. His hand contains Gamble, Wan Shitong Librarian, Mirror Maid, Lotus Petal, Cavern of Souls, Polluted Delta, and Misty Rainforest. Dan is again playing Atraxa, Grand Unifier. His hand contains a Vampiric Tutor, Windfall, The One Ring, Toxic Deluge, Misty Rainforest, Besaja Who Endures, and a Tundra. Tyler's playing Magda, Brazen Outlaw. This is a rare monocolor combo tribal deck. It can piece together instant speed wins with Clock of Omens and any artifact dwarf. His hand contains a Spark Mage, Thorn of Amethyst, Uba Mask, Chalice of the Void, the Great Train Heist, Soul Ring, and Barbarian Ring. And with that, let's see some value plays. Nick plays a Windswept Deep as land for turn. He pays Life of Craxid, fetching up a Tropical Island. He casts a Birds of Paradise. Nick then passes the turn. John plays a Polluted Delta as land for turn. He pays Life of Craxid, fetching up a Volcanic Island. He casts a Lotus Petal. John passes the turn. Dan casts a Lotus Petal. He plays a Misty Rainforest as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it. In response, John flashes in a Wan Shi Tong, Librarian. Dan searches up a Bayou, and Wan Shi Tong triggers to draw and get a counter. Dan then passes the turn. Tyler plays a Barbarian Ring as land for turn. He casts a Soul Ring. Tyler passes the turn. Nick untaps and draws. He plays Savannah as land for turn. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts an Arcane Signet. He casts Carpet of Flowers. Nick moves to his second main phase and adds a black with his carpet. He casts his commander, Tymna the Weaver. Nick passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He casts a Gamble. He shows the table he's searching up a Ragavan and randomly discards Cavern of Souls. He plays a Misty Rainforest as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Steam Vents into play untap, paying 2 life. He casts Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. John goes to combat and swings Wan Shi Tong at Nick. He takes the damage, and John passes the turn. In his end step, Dan casts Vampiric Tutor. He searches up a card at the top of his library and loses 2 life. Wan Shi Tong gets a counter and draws. The turn then moves to Dan. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Tundra as land for turn. He casts a Soul Ring. He taps out to cast the One Ring. It enters and triggers to gain protection from everything. Dan taps the One Ring to draw a card. He then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He casts his commander, Magda, Brazen Outlaw. He misses his land drop and passes the turn. Nick untaps and draws. He plays a Verdant Catacombs as land for turn. He casts his other commander, Thrasios, Trade Hero. Nick goes to combat, but Tyler threatens to trade commanders if he tries to get in. Nick goes to a second main phase and adds 2 white mana through Carpet. He casts Smothering Tithe. It resolves and Nick passes the turn. John untaps and draws. Tithe triggers and Nick makes a treasure. He goes to combat and swings Ragavan at Tyler. He says not to test him, but there's a Thrasios and a One Ring that mean John can't get in anywhere else. Tyler blocks with Magda and both creatures die. In his second main phase, John plays City Traders as land for turn. He casts a Mirror Maid. It resolves as a copy of Smothering Tithe over the groans of the table. John then passes the turn. Dan untaps and in his upkeep takes 1 from the One Ring. He draws. 2 Tithe trigger and both players make a treasure. Dan taps the One Ring to hesitantly draw 2 cards. 4 Tithe triggers happen and everyone makes treasures. Dan plays Command Tower as land for turn. He casts a Toxic Deluge, paying 4 life as an additional cost. In response, Nick pays life and cracks Verdant Catacombs, fetching up an Underground Sea. Wan Shi Tong triggers to draw. Tithe triggers to make a treasure. Nick then activates Thrasios, scrying and revealing Ottawa, Sorting City, into play tapped. Deluge then resolves and the board is reset. Dan then casts Esper Sentinel. He casts Mana Vault. Dan then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. 2 Tithe trigger and both players make treasures. He plays Mishra's Workshop as land for turn. He casts Roaming Throne, naming Dwarf as it enters. Tyler then passes the turn. Nick untaps and draws. Tithe triggers and John makes a treasure. He plays Bayou as land for turn. He recasts his commander, Thrasios, Triton Hero. Nick then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. Tithe makes Nick a treasure. John casts his commander, Vivi Ornitier. He casts Stock Up, Vivi and Esper trigger. Dan draws, 2 Tithes make treasures, and then Vivi gets a counter and deals 1 to each opponent. John looks at the top 5 and puts 2 cards in hand. He casts Light Up the Stage for its spectacle cost. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. He exiles Faithless Looting and Mog Salvage from the top of his library. John casts Faithless Looting. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. John draws 2 and discards 2. Tithe makes 2 treasures for Nick. John casts Secret Identity, targeting Vivi for its second mode. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. In response, Nick activates Thrasios, revealing an offer you can't refuse, drawing it. Tithe makes John a treasure. Nick casts an offer, targeting Secret Identity. Esper triggers and Dan draws. 2 Tithes trigger and Nick and John make treasures. Offer counters Identity and John makes 2 treasures. John then casts Lion's Eye Diamond. Vivi triggers. In response, Tyler casts Red Elemental Blast, targeting Vivi. Esper triggers and Dan draws. The Tithes make 2 treasures. John casts Deflecting Swat, targeting REB. Vivi triggers. Nick holds priority and casts Mindbreak Trap on all of John's spells. In response, John casts Mog Salvage for free, targeting Mana Vault. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. Mana Vault is then destroyed. John's spells are then exiled, and then Vivi gets a counter and deals 1 to each opponent. In response to REB, John activates Vivi's mana ability, making 3 blue and 3 red mana. Vivi is then destroyed. The final Vivi trigger pings everyone for 1. John recasts Vivi Ornitier. It resolves and John casts Past in Flames. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. In response, Nick activates Thrasios, scrying 1 and revealing Mockingbird. Tithe makes a treasure. Past in Flames resolves, and each instant sorcery in John's grave gains flashback equal to its mana cost. John casts Secret Identity for its bottom mode, targeting Vivi. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. Vivi then becomes a 3/4 base. He exiles Simian Spirit Guide from his hand to help cast Stock Up. Vivi triggers. In response, Nick activates Thrasios to scry 1 and reveal Eldritch Evolution, drawing it. Tithe triggers and Nick pays. Vivi then gets a counter and deals 1 to each opponent. John looks at the top 5 and adds 2 of them to hand. He plays Scalding Tarn as land for turn. CEDH Trader's triggers to sacrifice itself. He pays life and cracks Scalding Tarn, fetching up a mountain. John casts Mox Opal. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. He activates Vivi to make 4 blue and 3 red mana. He spends 6 on a Niv Mizzet Visionary. It resolves and John casts Faithless Looting. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. Niv triggers to draw 3. Tithe triggers to make 3 treasures. John then draws 2 and discards 2. Tithe triggers to make treasures. John casts Gamble. Vivi triggers. John holds priority and casts Fierce Guardianship, targeting Gamble. Vivi triggers. John holds priority and casts an offer you can't refuse, targeting Fierce. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. Niv triggers to draw 3. Nick then makes 3 treasures. Nick activates Thrasios, scrying and revealing Kinnan, drawing it. Tithe makes John a treasure. Offer counters Fierce, and John makes 2 treasures. Vivi then pings everyone and gets a counter. Niv triggers to draw 3, and Tithe triggers to make Nick 3 treasures. Vivi's last trigger then resolves and pings each opponent and gets a counter. Niv triggers to draw 3. Tithe triggers to make Nick 3 treasures. Nick activates Thrasios, revealing a Deadly Relic, drawing it. Tithe makes John's treasure. Nick fires Deadly Relic, targeting Niv Mizzet. John responds with a Daze, returning Steam Vents to hand as an alternate cost. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. Niv triggers to draw 3, and Tithe triggers to make Nick 3 treasures. Daze then resolves, and Nick pays 1. Rollick then exiles Niv Mizzet. In response to Gamble, Nick activates Thrasios again, revealing Limdul's Vault, drawing it. Tithe makes John a treasure. John taps Opal for a blue mana here while he has the treasures. Gamble then resolves, searching up a card to hand and randomly discarding Mystic Peak. He casts Jessica's Will for both modes targeting Dan. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. He has 6 red mana and exiles Chrome Mox, Soul Ring, and Valley Floodcaller. John casts Underworld Breach. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. He escapes Lotus Petal from his grave. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. He casts Mystical Tutor. Vivi triggers to get a counter and deal 1 to each opponent. John searches up a Brain Freeze to the top of his library. He escapes Lotus Petal again. Vivi triggers to get a counter and ping each opponent for 1. He casts Born Upon a Wind. Vivi triggers. It resolves and John draws. Tithe triggers and John responds with a loop of his own. He can present Lotus Petal and Brain Freeze with all copies milling himself out. He can cast Lotus Petal a couple of times for blue mana to then cast Hullbreaker Horror from his grave. He can now cast Chrome Mox and have Hullbreaker Horror trigger to return Lotus Petal to hand. He can loop Chrome Mox and Lotus Petal over and over for no mana at instant speed, having Vivi ping each opponent each time he performs this loop. He does this over and over until the table is dead. And with that, John wins the game. So what did we learn today? Turns out stacks beat Storm. Without it, they will just go off at the drop of a hat. And if you're going to play Control, maybe put a board wipe or 2 in, just in case. If you have any tips for the video, leave them below. Subscribe if you feel like it. Until next time, keep making value plays.
Is it dual basic land?
Gulp. Oh no!
Uh-oh.
Oh no!
I don't like that.
Magazine.
Hey, where them counters, Dan?
What would that
I know. Wow, guys, can you believe my City of Traders does not sacrifice?
Nice. Yeah.
Yay!
You can't keep getting away with it.
I'm amazing. Dude, it's a good thing Dan gave me these fucking treasures.
You're welcome.
Yeah, right.
I have this. I'm not showing this to John.
Got it.
I'm not sure. I could.
Tyler looks so unimpressed.
No, it's not. It's not amazing.
Can I ask you, can you cast it?
Yeah,
Yes.
you could.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, he
I-
can.
yeah.
Oh,
There's-
he's powerful.
there's-
Dan's quite
Whoa!
powerful.
It's not. It's not. I'm just showing it to you because
Okay,
there's
okay.
2 potential options
That man
that
can
it could
be
hit.
Also, and I'm just going to say this out loud for fun, that Beseiju hits non-basic lands.
Oh, it's really.
I'm just
true.
going to say it out loud.
So true.
That you
So
can't,
true.
you can't, like,
Okay. Yeah.
you can't ever down mana her.
That's good. All right. never
Okay,
mind.
we're good. We got to protect that fucking maggot.
What are you talking about?
What?
Dog,
Dang.
this hand would be insane if you had mana.
I get
Oh, I forgot about
3
this
treasures?
card. I mean, I'll show everybody. I forgot that this card was in
It's a
the
Seaboard and a Wish Claw. It's like literally you can do
God.
anything you want if he had the ability to cast it.
or one
I
non
cast
red.
one spell.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Yeah.
Because I
No,
know
I
these
hate
things.
it. Thank you.
did
You're right.
say.
Every turn we should check.
Yeah.
I haven't shit the bed yet.
Nice.
I'm gonna
Check again next turn.
Thanks, John.
That's there.
Dan, no shitting. I mean, who thinks that they have something that could help if my shit gets punted?
Oh, I can do it.
You could do it?
Yeah, I'll just get Psych Rift and overload it. I have nothing but mana.
Yeah, I don't love that.
Well, it's not-
You're talking about deluging your whole board anyway.
That's
If
true.
if I
It really is true.
overload it, you just have them in hand.
No, I have more things to do, and it will.
I mean, it hurts, but you could just deluge on 2.
I don't have deluge.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know. I
I've
didn't
been
hear you say
looking.
you don't have
I
it.
don't
Sorry.
have it, yeah.
Do you have Cypher probably, right?
No, I looked. I don't.
Wow.
Crazy. I know.
Control my ass.
Yeah.
He's got 3 counters and he thinks he's in control that.
I just play value.
What the
and
hell are
it's
the
basic.
outs? Yeah, what are your outs?
This is
dude?
value plays only.
Dude. He's got 100 mana and tutored. But I could tutor once, and that is death.
We know you have the answer.
He has tutored twice.
I don't have any answers. I said that.
My man has Wish Claw twice and tried to give me Wish Claw twice, and Cammy has blown it up 2 times in a row before I went down.
I'm gonna look.
That's awesome.
And yet,
Oh, I
Tyler's
should
doing
guard.
nothing with it. And I'll swing Ragavan at you.
And me?
Yeah.
Why? Dude, I'm in.
I can't hit him. He has Thrasios,
and Dan's
and he has
got
protect. I
protect.
literally, I don't want to hit you, but I want a treasure, and like I have no other choice. Look, man, I gambled for this. I'm gonna get one fucking treasure, or I'm gonna kill your guy. Like I'm gonna do something with it. I'm certainly not gonna pass after gambling and taking 2 turns for this.
One treasure I can see.
Yeah.
Opal's not online.
Opal's not online.
Correct.
Yeah,
So you have
I have
one
nothing
mana.
else on board.
Correct. That's actually
Anything you draw gives me a mana, to be clear.
correct. Correct. Yeah.
That's how I love playing against Thrasios decks.
Oh, reveal Deadly Relic.
Jessica's will targeting Dan trigger BB.
Oh, that's a good card.
John, I got one.
Shut the hell up.
Dumb as hell. 6.
Am I going to resolve it? Cast
Oh,
Lotus
breaker
Petal,
work,
cast
yeah.
Hullbreaker, and I can just bounce 2 rocks, and BB will just ping you guys to death.
Yep.
And that'll be the end of it.
Dude, there.
Yeah, Chalice of the Void, you're
I
saying?
had Chalice and Thorn, but I was 4th. It was just like, okay, I'm so behind, and I'm not ever coming back if I cast either one of these things. So
Yeah.
it just sat in my hand and did nothing. So I won't. I will be remembering that.
Yeah.
Force
Well, remember the
don't
turn order
keep-
sucks.
Yeah.